All of this from Robert Spalding, who's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. No introduction there. What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, it's a pattern of propaganda that the Chinese Communist Party execute on a near daily basis. This is the way that they operate. I think people can see through it. Clearly, they know that this did not originate by the U.S. Army. The Army wasn't in Wuhan. In fact, the Chinese have a pretty strict border control. They have the People's Armed Police. They have the Ministry of State Security. I was a defense attaché in Beijing. When my folks went around the country, they were watched at all times. So the Chinese government has that country locked down. The Chinese Communist Party is the most powerful totalitarian regime in existence. So I think it's pretty disingenuous.
You know, I'm not one to promote conspiracy theories at all, but you have to admit the timing of it is pretty ironic. We see unprecedented tensions between the United States and Iran, and we have an ongoing trade war and trade negotiations that are happening between Washington and Beijing. I mean, what do you make of the timing of all of this?
Well, I mean, it's how do you know what's going on? The problem clearly is non-transparency, but it's not the United States. This clearly started in China. That's where the epicenter is, and it spread from there. If you go to Beijing today, the people of Beijing don't actually look to the government for data. They look to the U.S. Embassy for air quality index. I live there. I talk to them. This is the facts. When they go abroad, even their military, when they do port calls in Australia, they fill up their ship with baby formula. So this is a pattern of the Chinese people not even trusting the Chinese government. So, I think most the free world doesn't trust them either.
Robert, on the administration, the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus outbreak, President Trump received a lot of criticism for that Oval Office address. The EU is not happy about this travel ban on 26 countries. What do you make of the response, given that you look at things through a national security and an economic lens?
Well, I think what we're coming to grips with is globalization, the internet, and the challenges it creates for societies, particularly with the global pandemic. How do we treat people when they come through a port? How do we treat people when they come through a border? How do we quarantine them if they need? What are the procedures? I think we have gotten used to this idea that people can move freely, and when you have a pandemic, you actually have to have procedures in place. So part of this is really shoring up, I think, what has clearly been a challenge for medical professionals in getting this under control.
Do you think the travel ban is going to be effective?
I don't think so, and the reason is I think we're past a point where it could have been controlled. I think the Chinese government could have done better in the early outbreak of this to slow it down and actually perform the adequate protocols to solve it. It's too late now. It's going to spread. But let's be honest here. It's a little bit worse than the flu, but not much worse than the flu. And it's not killing young people like the Spanish flu was. So there's a lot of panic, of course. This is natural with people. There's two human motivations. There's greed and there's fear. Now people are afraid. The good thing about this is that they're starting to realize, wait, all of our medicines come from China. Wait, all of the masks come from China. I was looking at the fact that F-35 parts came from China. So when everything comes from China, how do you make masks? How do you make medicines? This is a problem.
That's interesting. All right, Robert Spalding, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.